Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the morning rant, Thursday, March 9th, 2023. Uh, Hope you'll forgive me. I'm just getting some stuff situated here. Today's going to be fun. Um, the other day, or was it yesterday, when I was talking with Chad, um, we were talking about trends, and I had mentioned that the reason for that uh, subject was because of an article that Amanda sent me about, what's going to be trendy and, what isn't, and this, that, and the other. It wasn't necessarily kind of a dictatorial article saying, what should be trendy in 2023 or this, that, and the other. It sounded more to me, and maybe you guys can tell me differently. Uh, it sounded more to me like it was making fun of the concept of dictating uh, what trends, what should be trendy. And I don't know, that's the vibe that I got from it. But originally, I had actually told Amanda before I even read the article that I wasn't necessarily fond of the idea of talking about trends, so to speak, because at 38, I don't really give a shit anymore what's trendy, nor do I ever think I did give a shit. Um, but obviously, once I read the article, I realized it wasn't really, what it presented itself to be. It wasn't really something dictating what was going to be trendy. But part of the article, like in the first half, um, triggered a thought in my head about this trend that we've seen probably in the last, I don't know, 5, 6 years. I think it's become more of a thing, um, of, and maybe it's because social media pushes it in our faces more, um, where each year colleges will release uh, their list of banned words going into the new year. And I don't, I always thought that this was kind of foolish. And I thought that it was a product of the social media generation. Um, but apparently I was extremely wrong because I looked into it. Apparently, this particular practice dates all the way back to the 1970s, which was when my mother was in high school. Um, the only reason I thought that it was a product of social media was because until social media came along, I didn't know that this practice existed of releasing lists of banned words, that we shouldn't be using anymore. Um, and it's just we've talked. I mean, people have talked over the last 6, 7, 8 years, um, about how there's been unfortunately more of a push toward censorship as far as language. And I mean, it's definitely become something that people can't avoid, deny, anything like that. You can't deny that there are groups of people that are very actively pushing for the censorship of spoken language and many other forms of expression. Um, but to see that this practice goes back, what is it, 50? See, mom's 63. No, she's going to be 63. No, yeah, no, she is 63. Uh, I have no concept of time, um, especially this early in the morning. Uh, she was born in 60, was in high school in the 70s. So yeah, it was a little over 50 years old, this whole practice of the banned words list. And to know that it goes back that far, it makes me wonder why. Trying to get something off of one of my things off my desk here. Uh, it makes me wonder when things like that exist, how we can, you know, honestly say that we're trying to be a progressive society. Um, because I think being a progressive society lends itself to the belief that you progress beyond the practices of yesterday. You know, prior to 1950, I would say that there was far more of a push towards censorship than there is today. But when practices like this still exist, it makes me really question how determined people are to actually, like, it makes me wonder what their definition of progressive is. Um, because obviously we know today there's the real definition, and then there's the definition that the cancel mob decides to bully the people into changing it to. Because never in my life would I have ever imagined a, a mob of people bullying an institution like Webster's Dictionary into changing the definitions of things on, in their publications, albeit now online. But I never thought I'd see that day. And it's absolutely disgusting to me that we, not we, a small pocket of people try to project themselves as progressives, but there's nothing progressive about them at all. They're actually very regressive and very oppressive, I'll even say. Um, so, in general, I think within the last 8 or so years, that I've come to be aware of this, banned words list. For me, it's always been, you know, buzzwords that are banned. Um, which, if you go back to the era that I grew up in, like late 80s, early 90s, and even into the 2000s, there were, I don't know that we called them buzzwords back then, but it was just vernacular that we used. Um, if you don't know that word, look it up. Wow, that brought me back to Pay It Forward. If you guys have ever seen the movie Pay It Forward, um, there's um, a scene in there when Kevin Spacey, who is the teacher, is talking to his class of students, and he's using big words, and all of a sudden the kids are looking at him like, "What does that mean?" And he doesn't shy away from using big words. He just says, "Look it up after class if you don't understand what it means." And I love that. Like, I love that whole concept of that movie. Um, or at least that portion of that movie. The concept of the movie is very dark, but yeah, I mean, it used to be that words were part of just the normal vernacular that we used on a daily basis amongst friends. Now, depending on which group of people you were in, albeit your friends, your family, professionals, you definitely used different vernacular depending on which group you were speaking with. And I think that was the key thing for my generation to understand. Now you have these Gen Z little punks trying to use the same vernacular that they use with their friends with, their uh their parents, grandparents, school officials, professionals, and it doesn't translate as well. And I don't know, and I think these kids get mad when when the older generation doesn't know what the fuck they're saying. And they've got to understand that not everybody's going to know what you are saying if you're using words that you've made up. And God knows there's a ton of them nowadays. Um, that's why I stick to, basic English language, um, because for the most part, I think that people are people are bastardizing the English language as it is and turning words that mean one thing into another, and it's a whole mess. Um, and it hurts because I'm all about, interaction, conversation, communication. But when you're bastardizing these terms that mean one thing to fit your own narrative and your feelings, that's where it gets muddy. And that's where, people from my generation tend to argue and, fight back. But I wanted to go through an article that I found as far as um, the trend of uh, colleges coming up with banned words list. Now, the one thing that I thought, and I may have said this already, but the one thing I thought was that it was just one college that did it. As I was doing research this morning, I realized no, it's every damn college that's doing it. Like every college, at least the public or well, not even the public ones because the public ones are generally nonprofit, local schools or, local kind of community colleges versus the state universities that are uh, donor funded to a disgusting degree too, because of what these colleges are doing nowadays. But it seems like the bigger universities are, partaking in this, practice of creating these banned words list. And right there, it tells you that they are pushing for the censorship of spoken language. And I want to get into this article that I found. Not that I necessarily like NPR, but it's from NPR. So let me see if I can bring it up here and we'll take a look at it. Here we go. I was going to say, I didn't know if it would. Okay, there we go. Now let me get it up so I can control my window of it. Uh, okay, this was January 1st, 2023. So this is extremely relevant. It says an inflection point for goats. Please be, please quiet, quit these banished words moving forward. That whole quiet quitting thing, that's another thing that I I want to go into, but I don't know if my brain has the capacity to deal with it. When was the last time you called somebody a goat? Obviously, we know this in popular culture to be greatest of all time. Um, I guess arguments could be made as far as who's considered a goat, um, because I think they allow people to adopt that term, and they're actually terrible people. Um, so, when was the last time you called somebody a goat or declared an inflection point or answered a yes or no question with absolutely? Um, I answer questions like that all the time. Probably too recently, says the faculty of Lake Superior State University. Uh, the Michigan college that releases an annual list of words that it says deserve to be banished from our vocabularies over misuse, overuse, and uselessness. Now, yeah, I can get on board with that, but it all depends on what words they're trying to ban. It says our nominators insisted, and our arts and letters faculty judges concurred that to decree the banished words list of 2023 as the GOAT is tantamount to gaslighting. I don't understand how calling somebody a goat is gaslighting. Uh, does that make sense? Said Rodney S. Hanley of the university's president in a very serious statement announcing the new list. Okay, he said irregardless. That's not a word. That's literally not a word. That is not a word that exists. And it irritates me that people say irregardless instead of regardless. That needs to that there's my point of bastardization of English language. Regardless, I'm gonna correct him. Moving forward, it is what it is. An absolutely amazing inflection point of purposeless ineptitude that overtakes so many mouths and fingers. Here is the full list of the university's banished words for this year. Um, goat, which I mean, I don't think that anybody's going to stop using that, nor do I think that it's necessary. Inflection point, I've never heard that being used. Quiet quitting, I don't. That was just something recently that started happening amongst mostly Gen Z who obviously can't handle their own lives. They can't actually handle being a part of the real world because they had not even helicopter parents, they had snowplow parents, the ones that just completely plowed all obstacles out of their way so that they didn't have to deal with anything that challenged them. That's what irritates me about Gen Z. Um, so yeah, quiet quitting is gone, thank God. See, now gaslighting, this is where I have a problem with them trying to get rid of the word gaslighting because I think that gaslighting, especially in today's society, keeping that word around is necessary because there's so much of the act of gaslighting happening. And we're finding that out with all of the information that's coming out right now regarding, the beer bug, um, and many things that we've dealt with over the last 3 or 4 years. So, no, I don't think gaslighting should be, a banned word because by banning it, you're making it so people can't get called out for trying to mislead people and trying to make them feel like they're going crazy because that's exactly what gaslighting is. It is altering the perception of somebody's understanding of an event that they are aware of, but trying to make them think that it happened differently than it actually did. That's gaslighting. I actually got accused of gaslighting from a friend of mine, and it was purely because he disagreed with the information that I was presenting to him, even though now, when they call people, conspiracy theorists, it it's hard to call people conspiracy theorists when those things you call conspiracies are proven true. So when he called, and I lost it on him when he said I was gaslighting, uh, or gaslighting him because that is a very heavy accusation. You really have to be, you know, sure that you're, you know, justified in, accusing somebody of gaslighting. Um, let's see. Moving forward, I don't know why that would be banned. That's just stupid. They want to ban the question, does that make sense? Oh, now I understand why that guy or the guy, girl, whatever, whoever wrote this. Uh, Now I understand why they ironically used the word irregardless. See, that word just makes me cringe, and they're probably gonna ban that word too. Um, Absolutely, there's no reason to ban that one. It is what it is. That's a statement basically used by people who, if you see some of the memes that go around, they though the people that use that more often than not aren't really interested in confrontation or trying to change people's minds because it's usually people who aren't going to change their minds. So it's kind of like whatever it is, what it is. No, that should not be banned. Um, there's over 50 or out of over 1,500 nominations from people across the US, which I highly doubt. It's probably your stupid ass liberal, you know, putting people, students that, you can manipulate into thinking in a certain way. From people across the US and as as far afield as New Zealand and Namibia, I that's a stretch, I think. Judges declare this year's top offender is GOAT, the acronym greatest of all time. Eh, Commentators and faculty alike found the term objectionable because of both its impossibility. How can anyone declare a single best of all time when another may come along in the future? And see, that's the general misunderstanding of GOAT. Um, like in the realm of basketball, they consider Michael Jordan the GOAT. Um, and people of the generation that watched Michael Jordan play still consider him the GOAT. Um, I think GOAT is generational to a certain extent. Um, I understand the what they're trying to say, but I think GOAT is going to be generational based on opinion instead of when we call Michael Jordan the GOAT, we're looking at the overall actual statistics and the facts behind it. And we all know that the younger generation hates facts and things that are provable. Um, so I don't know who is trying to ban the acronym, but they need to just fucking stop. Uh, Says, how can anyone declare a single best of all time when another may come along in the future? And the liberal way the title is dispensed these days. That's the fault of, the liberal-minded people that we have in the world today because, they don't they're calling somebody a goat based on their own feelings towards them instead of actually doing the research to see, especially when it's somebody in sports, are they really worthy of that title? It went from based on facts and provable statistics to just an opinion and a means, a cause for contention as far as, having a conversation about it. Um, Says the singularity of greatest of all time cannot happen, no way, no how, and instead of being selectively administered, is readily conferred. Uh, Peter Statmary, I don't know, a spokesperson for Lake State University or Lake State, and said in the statement. Um, I do agree that it needs to be selectively administered, um, because it doesn't fit everybody. It's like when somebody says it's that whole concept of if everybody is, then nobody is. It's that whole kind of concept. So I understand the overuse of it, but we need to just encourage these people to look up truth and statistics about these people that they're declaring the goat of whatever. Um, because let's be honest, and maybe this is an opinion, I don't know. I don't think you can declare LeBron James the GOAT, um, because I still think that the likes of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and that generation of athlete, uh, they're the ones that actually are given that distinction based on their statistics and not because of the fact that LeBron James is posting things on social media that agree with the overall bullshit narrative That's why people call him the GOAT nowadays, not because he actually knows how to play. It's because he's, falling in line with the general narrative think of the hour. And people need to stop messaging me. That's what I'm just gonna say. I don't know if anybody's watching me, if you're messaging me, but no, you guys need to stop messaging me. And I'm not going over there to shut off my phone. In the spirit of full disclosure, a review of NPR transcripts reveals at least 17 candidates for GOAT on our air in 2022 alone, including soccer player Pele, Diego Maradona, long distance runner. Wow, these are people I don't know how to pronounce their names. U.S. track Olympian Allison Felix, women's tennis star Serena Williams, alongside a trio of her main colleagues, Roger Federer, somebody I grew up watching, Novak Djokovic, grew up watching him, Rafael Nadal, grew up watching him, quarterback Tom Brady. Now, that's and granted, I will say that, if I'm gonna watch football, it's gonna be the Patriots. Um, People give Tom Brady shit because there are fans that call him the GOAT. Now, statistically, he is the GOAT because of his record, not just because people have an opinion and think that he's, the be all end all. He actually has the stats to back it up. Um, so he does deserve that distinction. Um, Hockey player Wayne Gretzky, somebody else I grew up watching. Statistically, he does have, the right to be, uh, to have that distinction of GOAT. And there we go. Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Bill Russell, Surfer Kelly Slater, the video game Elden Ring. I don't know if you can necessarily ascribe the acronym of GOAT to an inanimate object like a video game, um, because I think that's subjective. Because people play so many video games in the course of their life, it's not always going to be, you know, th- that's when it becomes purely opinion and people or things are screwing up on my screen here. Um, Lake State judges, faculty judges would likely argue this is way too many people and non people described as the greatest of all time. Words and terms matter. If words and terms mattered, then people wouldn't be bastardizing the English language. Joining goat and banishment are nine other words and phrases that nominators and judges complained are used too often that they have become disconnected from their literal meanings. Yeah, for the most part, yes. Like amazing, which nominators fretted no longer means dazzling or awe-inspiring. Um, yeah, I will say that, the word amazing definitely is a little bit overused. Um, so I guess I don't can entirely disagree with this. Not everything is amazing, and when you think about it, very little is. Yeah, that's very true. Um, In a more serious example, some worry that the overuse of the term gaslighting hurts the word's ability to describe a type of dangerous psychological manipulation. Yes, I will agree to that. Obviously, because I was accused of gaslighting and it was the farthest thing from what I was actually doing. Um, I basically just hurt somebody's feelings because they couldn't deal with the whole concept of facts over feelings, and they didn't wanna believe it because their, beloved sources that they use weren't telling them the same thing. Hundreds of words and phrases have been banished by LSSU since 1976. Over the years, LSSU has received tens of thousands of nominations for its annual list. Frequently targeted are of the moment phrases like in these uncertain times. I don't know that I've ever actually heard people speak those words. I've seen it in literature more often than not. Banished in 21 after so many beer bug related messages began with that phrase. Yeah, I can see that. Information superhighway. Hey, wait, that was banished in 1995. That was when it was created. Information superhighway and filmed before a live studio audience. I'm trying to remember. There's one specific show I grew up with. I believe it was Cheers that uh always after they did the intro song and it faded into the show. I believe it did say Cheers is filmed in front of a live studio audience. I don't necessarily hear that as much in uh TV today. So, uh such a vice, it was banished twice, first in 1987 and then 1990. Joining them are common linguistic bugaboos. Hope I don't, get somebody saying that I'm using a derogatory term there. Um, Frequently misused words like impact, redundancies like exact same. Yeah, that pisses me off when they people use that. Um, more often than not, I hear exactly the same. Um, so maybe if they actually use the English language more properly, uh, and completely empty. Yeah, that's a redundancy. Uh, or overly verbose phrases like at this point in time, why not just say now or today? Um, I do think, and I've been accused of this, before in the course of conversation. See, I have a very uh wide ranging vocabulary. There are a lot of words that I know that the general, individual doesn't use. And I don't use these words to mock or belittle people. They're just the first words that come to my mind. It's not like I seek to use these words. They just happen to be the first words that come to mind. But you can tell in the way that somebody is or verbalizing um, a statement, like speaking a statement. You could tell when they're just fishing for words to sound intelligent. And that's where the problem lies, is when they don't use them. They may be using them in the proper context, but you can tell in their inflection, in the way that they're saying them, that they're using them just to make themselves sound more intelligent when it's really not necessary. Um, why not say now or today? Yeah, I read that. Okay. Others have been words or phrases that have genuinely been offensive. I think offensive is subjective. For 1982, a mother encouraged the banishment of the word retarded. And now that I actually said that out loud, my, you know, video might get taken down. I don't know. Uh, and that's actually, I'll take this moment to say, if you see that I'm doing a live stream and then after the fact, for whatever reason, it gets taken down, I'm now over on Rumble and you can see all of the replays of my live streams over on Rumble. Um, I'll actually, after I'm done with this, I'll put the link to that in the description. I didn't think to do that, But this article actually makes a good point in, making sure that people know if some of my content isn't on fit or on YouTube, then it'll most likely be over on Rumble. Uh, Writing that her daughter had a or with a mental disability would with proper stimulation be able to learn and understand much more than we believe possible. See, the issue I have with that particular word and the way that that mother approached it is unless you are verbally accosting somebody and using that particular descriptive word, I don't necessarily see a problem with it because to harken back to the censorship aspect of it, there's a song by the Black Eyed Peas, the good version when they had Fergie, um, and it's called "Let's Get It Started," and it became a huge radio success. But it's because it's called "Let's Get It Started." They actually changed the name from "Let's Get Retarded" to "Let's Get It Started," and they had to do that for it to get radio play, and, uh, that just shows that people don't look into the context in which they are using the word. So, that's why I say being offended is extremely subjective, and it depends on the individual. Like, I I don't necessarily use it anymore, but all throughout middle school and high school, if, friends of mine or other people around us were acting stupid intentionally, we would use that word. It wouldn't necessarily it was more for the fact or more for the purpose of telling them to start acting right. It wasn't we never actually said it to somebody who was developmentally challenged. And me being a special needs individual myself, while not having a developmental challenge, I would never actually use that word in a way of attacking somebody who was developmentally challenged. But I will openly and, very aggressively use it to somebody who's acting stupid and needs to straighten up, because it gets their attention and kind of, it's a jarring word. And I think that it needs to be. So that's just my take on it. Okay. That's the end of that article. But yeah, overall I think that uh the the act of trying to ban words is in and of itself the practice of censorship. Um if you're gonna ban words, like some of those examples in there suggested other ways of speaking. It's all in how an individual is raised in their formative years, how they're going to speak and interact with their peers or their contemporaries. Um, so if parents actually just took more of an interest in their kids and raised them correctly, we wouldn't have such a gross bastardization of the English language and a need for these kids to find a completely other or a completely separate way of having verbal communication. Um, because and I won't get into the whole pronoun thing, but maybe I will sometime if I want to be controversial. But even with the pronoun thing, um, the way that they're using it now is a complete bastardization of the English language. But if you say that to them, it hurts their fragile feelings, and let's put some of these pronoun words, or at least the way that they use them, on these lists, and then let's see how they react then, because most of these colleges are full of liberally minded people who don't know how to think for themselves. And so when you get lists like this, it's going to be impossible for the normal everyday person to interact with the people who are addicted to these lists of, words that should no longer be used, because there's very little context to explain why these shouldn't be used. So you're going to get these college kids and high school kids seeing these lists and automatically adhering to, oh, this word can't be used, without understanding that majority of these lists are just arbitrary bullshit. And you know it, it's really hard to, you know find a way and find, that road into being able to interact with the younger generation when they're constantly screaming at you to not use certain words because some arbitrary stupid list told them it was banned, and by using it they've all of a sudden told you that it hurts their feelings. um Stop trying to ban words in general, uh because they come into and out of popularity every few years. Um, I know words that I used as a kid weren't necessarily popular to use when we were in middle school and high school, but they have popped in and out of common vernacular ever since I've been out of school, which is almost 20 years. Periodically, they'll come into and out of conversation. So it's all, I guess it's all a popularity thing, and I guess that's really the age that we're in. But for those of you who are going to be watching this after the fact, let me know in the comments what you think. Um, are there words that should be excommunicated from, general discussion, or if they're going to be, encouraged to be not used anymore, should we find an alternative instead of just outright saying this word can't be used? Because that to me is extremely oppressive. And I think it stops the general public from being able to communicate with each other, because the more words that are banned without alternatives, the less we're going to be able to speak to each other. And I've always said that conversation is absolutely crucial in being this progressive society that we are, supposedly trying to be or claiming to be. So let me know down in the comments below, and uh yeah, I will see you tomorrow, because we're going to end the week talking about pop culture and the act of collecting things, because something that is extremely big in pop culture right now may not be around for as long as we think it's going to be. So join me tomorrow. Look at the links in the description. There are merch links. There are ways to help grow the show by donation. There are ways to communicate with me outside of uh, general social media or on here. But if there are no comments necessarily in the chat, I will see everybody tomorrow morning. Bye, everyone.